I'm Stephanie, and welcome to Fiction Files. This is the playlist where I talk about all things writing, and today I'm sharing a writing hack that has helped put my own stories back on track. That hack? Plotting backwards. I flip-flop as a writer myself, where I go through periods of needing to just write by the seat of my pants, and other times where I feel my story has no direction or structure, so I sit down and start plotting and outlining it. But even then I get stuck by writer's block. If you're like me and struggle with outlining or plotting the whole thing, especially that bloated middle, there is one trick of the trade to help plot a story better by reverse engineering it. Sometimes, in order to move the story forward, we have to go backward. So, how do we do that? Start with your ending. How do you want your story to end? Will your protagonist achieve their goal? Think of where your characters are going to end up, and then we can start to figure out how they got there. We have to look at the milestones. Now that you know where your protagonist ends up, it's time to address the key milestones that got them there. Let's take Andy Weir's The Martian as an example, and spoilers ahead, but seeing as this book and the movie are a few years old, I feel okay using this as an example. We know that Mark's goal is to get off of Mars and back to Earth, in which he is successful. But now we have to map out why this was his goal. So it's logical that he'd have to be on Mars first, get stuck or left behind in some capacity, survive on Mars, figure out how to communicate with Earth or his crew, and do any preparations to be recovered. These key milestones are markers the story has to hit for the ending to make sense. Then we have to identify the conflicts. Now that you know the main markers, what kind of conflict can be in Mark's way? An obvious one is his need for oxygen, water, and food, which could stop him from achieving his goal of getting off the planet alive. How can this particular conflict manifest itself in the first, second, and third acts? Another conflict could be his equipment not working, so he cannot communicate. How can he take actions to continue trying to make it work or finding another solution to achieve his goal? Next, we have our cause and effect. Now that you've got a brainstorm of your major plot markers and conflicts, it's time to work your way backwards. Instead of writing in a linear fashion where you have a cause and then an effect, you're starting with the effect and finding the cause. For example, your protagonist is being hunted by a killer. The ending sees your protagonist survive the killer's attempts, and the killer ends up in police custody. What happened before that? What made the protagonist face the killer? Were they kidnapped? Did they choose to find the killer? Did the killer hold a loved one hostage? Let's go with the killer holding a loved one hostage. Then we have to figure out how the protagonist knew this. Did they get a ransom note? A mysterious text? Were they at the scene when the person was kidnapped but weren't brave enough to fight the killer? Continue asking questions that can force the protagonist to make choices that get them to the ending and overcome the conflicts that are thrown in the way. By knowing the ending and working backwards, you know how to set up the scenes that come before, as they have to happen for the rest of the ending to happen. Have you tried plotting backwards? Does this method work for you? Sound off in the comments below. Otherwise, thanks for watching Fiction Files.